A highly transparent culture is providing team members, our colleagues, a window or insights into how things operate and why we're making the decisions that we make, right? So that things aren't just happening in a vacuum. It's quite different from some of the firms I essentially grew up in, professionally speaking, in the early years of my career, where you had no idea how much clients would be charged. You had no idea who the points of contact were. You have no idea what we're quoting clients or why we're doing things. You're just, here's your task, you do it kind of thing. And that seems to work on the surface, but it prevents team members from having true kind of ownership as to what's going on, right? And like the understanding why what they're doing has an impact.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Jeff Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we look at transparency, specifically a highly transparent culture and what that means for a business and how it impacts the team and the way people come together. You might be surprised by some of the things we talk about today. Our special guest is Jeff Neumeister with Neumeister Associates. They are a tax, bookkeeping, controller, forensic accounting. They also do fractional CFOs work, and they made the Inc. list recently. And getting to know Jeff and talking to him about this and pulling out of him, what is a highly transparent culture? Why does it matter? And what impact does that make with the team? We talked about some things like ownership. We talked about trust. We talked about the aspects of people truly leaning in and rallying together when you actually share how the business works. And all of that is unpacked inside of this episode with Jeff. Now, my name is Jeff Hammett. I am an executive coach. We actually work with fast growth companies to help them find team alignment, which means executives and middle managers and everyone in between are aligned together, moving forward in a faster pace, and they're able to overcome challenges. That's what we do as a company. It's kind of a consulting / coaching company, if you will. And if you feel like we could help you, I'd love to get to know you and share some of our capabilities. If you're interested in that, go to our website, coreelevation.com. That's my company website, Core Elevation. But that is who I am, and I'd love to serve you. And when you listen in today's podcast, listen for the things that you can actually implement in your business. Some of them are very easy if you're willing to do it, and most of them absolutely free. So here's our interview with Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Hi, good. And Eugene?
I am top of the world. It's recording this right before Thanksgiving, and it's just been an incredible month for us over here. And I'm really excited to have you on the show, Jeff. Tell us about Neumeister Associates, your company.
Sure. We are a full service and licensed CPA practice. We do all the typical things that come to mind when someone hears the acronym CPA: taxes, bookkeeping, payroll. But where we really stand out is our expertise in some more unique and complex areas, such as forensic accounting, cryptocurrency, business valuations, fractional CFO work, you name it.
Exciting. I'm just curious, every business out here has bookkeepers and hopefully controllers and financial people that allow them. Where do you feel like the industry's going over the next 3 years? I don't know if it's being impacted by AI or not, but where do you think it's going?
I'd say over even the last few years and going into the next half decade, there's been a lot of commoditization and automation of lower tier accounting services, whether it be kind of just basic bookkeeping, basic tax prep. And I don't think that's going to go away. So what's kind of forced a lot of firms to do is to really differentiate is now you have to provide some higher value services, right? Especially if the lower tier stuff could be easily outsourced or duplicated.
Fantastic. I got a follow-up question on the business before we dive into our core topic today. You mentioned fractional CFO services. How does a company know that they need what you guys do?
For fractional CFO work, realistically, most businesses, especially if they're scaling, even if they're $1 million enterprise, need some degree of CFO expertise. Now, if that is not present in-house with current management or ownership, then you need to get it from somewhere, right? Whether it's the existing CPAs or it's an outside consultant that specializes in just that, it allows them to kind of get the minimum that they need in that perspective without being burdened by an entire salary. I will tell some of our clients is It probably doesn't make sense to bring in-house a full-time CFO for 300,000 a year plus a slew of benefits, given their size, especially if they're, $1 million, 2 million, 3 million, but they still need that expertise. So why not outsource just the degree that you need?
Well, thanks for explaining all that for us, Jeff. You guys made the Inc. list recently, and pretty impressive growth there. 2,407 was your number, and it's a 3-year revenue growth. And everyone's like, well, that doesn't count profitability. And I'm not going to ask your profitability numbers, but when you look at that kind of growth, you're probably not seeing that with most of your clients. You're probably growing at pretty fast pace compared to your clients.
Yes, I'd say, yeah, compared to most of our clients, as well as most of our competitors in the area, we're of a size or maturity level of firms that have been around for 15, 20 years. It took them to kind of get to this point. I think, and part of that translates to, or is due to just having a growth mindset.
Well, I know it's much more than that because that's the way you think, but you've got to have people. Yeah. You don't get to where you are right now in this business, not having the right people and the right culture. So we did research with you and your team before we allow anyone to come on the podcast. We want to vet and make sure everyone's curated for this show. You talked about a highly transparent culture. What is that, and what impact does that make on the business?
I think highly transparent culture is providing team members, our colleagues, a window or insights into how things operate and why we're making the decisions that we make, right? So that things aren't just happening in a vacuum. It's quite different from some of the firms I essentially grew up in, professionally speaking, in the early years of my career, where you had no idea how much clients would be charged. You had no idea who the points of contact were. You have no idea what we're quoting clients or why we're doing things. You're just, here's your task, you do it kind of thing. And that seems to work on the surface, but it prevents team members from having true kind of ownership as to what's going on, right? And like the understanding why what they're doing has an impact.
It's interesting you use the word ownership there. You don't know about my background, but I've been doing these interviews for over 9 years, but really focused on fast growth companies. We probably had over 600 fast growth companies on the show. And whenever ownership comes up, transparency is not very far behind, because it is one of the factors, one of the principles, if you will, that really lean into people feeling a sense of ownership of their work. And what does that really mean for your team and how they operate together?
They understand that they can have direct contact with clients, that they have direct impact on the success or the degree of success we have with our services and our individual clients, that there's not a barrier put up between the partners, the clients, and then the corresponding team members, right? If you don't have some degree of trust of your team members that they're not going to take those relationships and go try to start their own shop, then there's a problem, right? That trust needs to be there. And I think if we provide that transparency, it actually fosters more loyalty.
I agree with you. A lot of leaders don't see it the same way. And it's much more than financial transparency, I think, but financial transparency, like being able to share how the business works. That's one of the words you used. I think it's very important if you really want to empower people to make decisions. And you have people out there that are making decisions because you can't be on every one of these projects and every one of these clients.
Exactly. Yeah. That have to give them the ability to make decisions, to understand. And sometimes they make not such the best decision, and that's okay, right? Because the culture it provides a place that they can learn and grow, right? And if they fall flat because of a poor decision, they learn from that, right? They're not going to learn if they're not given the opportunity to kind of make some of those mistakes and course correct.
Now, Jeff's been talking about transparency, but why do you want to create real transparency in your business? Well, the reason being is because when you're not transparent, people feel like outsiders. People feel like they're not included. And when you are transparent, they feel like they're in the know. They feel like they're more connected to the work. And so you can be too transparent. I will tell you that. You can also be way more transparent than you probably are. Now, what I hope you'll do is look at the transparency that you have across your organization and see where you could be more transparent, where you could use a little bit more connection and trust and the impact that would make across the company. Talk about it with your executive team, and certainly think about yourself and how you could be more trusting of others and be more transparent to create more of a unity and a team effect across your team. Back to Jeff. So Jeff, I'm just curious, Did you read this out of a book? Did you just find it that you wanted a better way to engage with the culture of your team? Basically, how'd you find this sense of a highly transparent culture?
I think it stems from just my professional experiences, formal education. I have about 20 degrees. My experience, especially on the forensic side, because one thing we have that's very nice in forensic accounting when we do expert witnessing is hindsight, right? So we get to see where all these things kind of fell apart along the hierarchy of an organization's accounting and finance functions. The bookkeeping missed something, the controller missed something, the auditors missed something, the CFO missed something, right? All where all the decisions kind of follied in a way. And a lot of it's due to culture. So I think it's that understanding and appreciation of transparency kind of comes from all these different places.
My guess is all these clients that you're having to do forensic accounting for, there wasn't a high degree of transparency across the companies.
Yes. Yeah. Usually a lack of transparency, a lack of accounting for bookkeeping, sometimes no books, just Excel sheets, multi-million-dollar company, and they have some spreadsheets. Yeah.
Well, I think it's fascinating. How do you lead people knowing that this transparency is such a critical part of the business and hiring people and all the stuff that goes around that?
I think first and foremost is leading by example, right? By being transparent in what I do about the firm and why we're making the decision that we're making, kind of talking them through the decision-making process so they understand why we do what we do, right? And then they can provide their input anytime along the way.
We've been talking kind of in the context of financial transparency and how the business works. Would you say that you guys have the kind of transparency where you have open communication, you can give people feedback, you can really have honest conversations even when it's difficult?
Yes. Yeah. Whether even if it's not about specific client matters, even if it's not about specific accounting project, even just about how we operate from an HR perspective, right? Or just a general operational perspective, or what kind of culture we have and where should we devote our resources, and things as more trivial as, where does everyone how we want to celebrate the holidays this year, right? Do we hire this new person for this new role, or do we have the capacity in-house? And kind of just talking through things. So
I have this concept in my coaching business where I help, CEOs try to understand where their transparency line is, which is what do you deem as success, okay to share with your team and what's not, or maybe there's different people, like an executive team might get a different version of this that's more detailed. How do you wrestle with your own transparency line?
I think that's one it's always in flux of that line, where it resides, not just by team member level, but by the degree of details. Like, so for example, when going back to financial transparency, everyone in the firm pretty much knows how much we gross, roughly how much our profit margin is, just kind of the big picture things, what payroll, how much of a line item that eats up on our P&L. But the details behind that, most team members don't have all the details. HR, for example, they'll know all the details about payroll. Our director, operations manager, they'll know the details about all the line items. So it just kind of depends.
Now, let's talk about the transparency line. What I'm really referring to here is the line at which you believe things are okay to share, which is on the one side of the transparency line. And on the other side is the thing that it's not okay to share. And you're going to have different people that are have a different line. Your executive team might get a little bit more of a share from you. But what I know for sure, that if you create a culture that has a remarkable sense of transparency, this highly transparent culture that this whole episode's about, that you will find that people will rally for you, they will connect together, you will overcome challenges, and they will innovate at a faster pace. They will be able to make decisions, and you will be able to empower them. Now, there's a lot of more elements to this, and there's a lot of leadership that goes around this, but you've got to get this transparency thing right, in my opinion. I talked to a lot of companies on the Inc. list, and this is one of the most popular or most prevalent, if you will, aspects of why they're successful. They'll even come back and say it's because we're so transparent that we are successful, that we grow at the pace we do. My 2 cents. If I can help you in any way, reach out, let me know. Back to Jeff. Well, Jeff, I am kind of curious. I don't know if there's any stories that you can share with us about how transparency has really united and unified yourself. What I find is a lot of companies that have these transparency, it has given opportunity for people to rally when necessary. Is there anything that you can think about and that you're willing to share with us today?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Over the 6 years, this rapid growth, there's definitely some missteps along the way, whether it's a poor hire, inaccurate quoting for a client project, challenges on collecting on receivable, whatever it is, but things have impacted cash flow. So there's bumps along the road. And there's been a few bumps along the road the last 6+ years. It comes to covering our cash flow expenses, right? There's a lot sitting at AR, but that doesn't do much. We have to pay the rent, we have to run payroll. And fostering a culture where we are pretty transparent with things. When a couple of those instances came up over the years, and have several team members reach out like, hey, I could just defer my comp, or hey, do you want me to, I could put something in to help cover rent or whatever it is, right? Such a degree of ownership over something that they don't necessarily on paper have ownership in. So I think that is kind of a winning example of what we fostered.
And great story there. I think a lot of people listening in would love for their people to have a little bit more ownership into the work that they're doing. Is there anything besides transparency that you feel like increases that level of ownership?
I think it kind of runs in tandem with transparency of giving people a forum to voice their input, right? Especially on bigger decisions, especially on decisions that directly impact them, right? Allowing them to effectively be part of that decision-making process. Even if they don't have final say, at least them kind of voice their concerns and we could talk through it openly. And a lot of times having that open forum to talk things through, even if they weren't on board with a particular decision beforehand, them understanding why the collective decision, what it is, allows them for there to be some degree of buy-in. It makes it a lot easier, right? Than versus just, hey, here's the decision, deal with it.
I frame that in as inclusion. So we have transparency is kind of the sense of openness and being able to share this data. Inclusion means being a part of the decision, being a part of in the know. And maybe not everybody can be included, but those that are included do feel a higher sense of ownership. And that's what you're describing. Jeff, I really appreciate you being here. As we begin to wrap up today, is there anything else that you feel like contributes to the success of your organization, your culture, besides this highly transparent culture?
I think a focus on one another and our clients. One of the things I found, for example, in kind of like networking 101, right? The old school networking approach. You go somewhere and everyone's in there, okay, like, hey, give me some business. Hey, what can I sell you? It's all about the me kind of perspective. And in contrast to that, thinking about a little bit more long-term and bigger picture, and how can I be of a resource to others? A sense of service to one another, to my colleague sitting next to me, to my colleague on the other end of the office, to our individual clients. And if the focus is on outward, then all the me kind of stuff, it happens organically, right? Whether it be promotions, pay raises, bonuses, whatever. That stuff just comes naturally if you focus on others.
Jeff, that's a great place for us to wrap today. I really appreciate you being here, sharing with us a little bit about your business. It really is incredible to have other leaders that think about transparency and how important that is across the culture and the impact that has on the company. So, Jeff, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gene.
Wow, what a great conversation. I love talking about transparency. It's one of the things I feel like businesses don't talk about these things that much. They just get to the work done and they address the challenges and the problems that are inside the business, and they try to sell things and they try to move. And all of those things are very important. But we should take time to talk about what is transparency and why are we, successful in as a culture. A highly transparent culture is something I feel like you should be striving for. And hopefully today's interview really helps you. I'm an executive coach, been doing this for over a decade. And if I can help you with anything that you're doing, maybe it's, we have coaches on staff that can help you coach the brilliant people to the next level. Or maybe it's been managers becoming to leaders, or maybe there's something missing inside your culture that you just haven't put your finger on. A lot of people come to us because they just want to keep growing. They want to keep that predictable growth, and they're not sure how to address the people problems that get in the way. And that's exactly what we help you do. So if we can help you in any way, reach out to me. I'm Gene Hammett, and our company is Core Elevation. As always, lead with courage. I'll talk to you next time.